The door clanked shut, plunging me into a sudden, deafening quiet. Empty house, yet not as planned. Sarah was supposed to be home early to put the kids to bed, but there was no trace of her or them. Taking a deep breath, I fought down the rising panic. A whiff of Sarah's peculiar perfume filled the air, a scent she seldom used before. Something was amiss. The living room remained pristine, not a toy out of place, as if nobody had been here all night. My phone vibrated with a message. Mrs. Jenkins informed me, "Your children are with her." Sarah claimed an emergency at work demanded her attention. Emergency? No calls had come from my workplace. My stomach nodded as I read the text. On impulse, I climbed the stairs, each footfall reverberating in the silence. Upon entering the bedroom, there lay Sarah's new gown, crumpled on the floor, carrying lingering scents of smoke and an unfamiliar cologne. My fists tightened as the truth struck me. I didn't hesitate. I snatched the dress and discarded it in the bin. If she believed she could stroll into this place after whatever nonsense she'd been up to, she was gravely mistaken. The children weren't around, and I wasn't going to stand idle like a fool. I raided the closet for my travel bag and began packing her belongings. If she thought this wasn't her home, I'd make it abundantly clear she wasn't welcome here. Just then, I heard her car returning to the driveway. I didn't falter, only continued hastily stuffing her garments into the bag, my heart racing with each action. The downstairs door creaked open, followed by the sound of her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Honey?" she echoed, her voice airy, clueless. I stood still, halfway through packing the bag. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and she was blissfully unaware. The bedroom door creaked open, and there she stood in the doorway, her smile faltering as she surveyed the room. The filled bag, the vacant house, and the anger in my gaze. "Where are the children?" she questioned, her voice trembling. I remained silent, only watching her as understanding seeped into her. Tonight wasn't another one of her secrets. It was the night everything fell apart. Sarah's smile vanished entirely as she fixed her gaze on the half-packed bag on the bed, her eyes flickering between me and the mountain of clothes tumbling out of the wardrobe. Her fingers twitched nervously, and she took a slight step back, seeming to attempt to evade the looming confrontation. "Where are the children, Matt?" she asked again, this time with more apprehension in her voice. I advanced, bridging the distance between us. "They're secure, Sarah." I ensured that. I noticed the bewilderment and terror beginning to fill her eyes. "Good," I thought. "You should feel afraid." "Why are you collecting your belongings?" Her voice grew sharper, as if trying to regain control over the situation, but it was clear she had lost it already. "I believe you understand why," I replied, my voice now sounding distant to my own ears. From my pocket, I took out her phone, the one she had left behind in her haste tonight. The messages I'd seen from him weren't the type one could brush off as mere friendly banter. Her face paled at the sight of the phone in my hand, and she made no effort to deny it, which spoke volumes. "Matt, it's not what you think," she began hesitantly, her words fading as she recognized their feeble nature. "On the contrary, what I believe is that you've been secretly meeting with someone for an extended period and thought yourself clever while doing so. Sarah, you underestimate your actions, not your intelligence." Anger, guilt, perhaps a touch of remorse flickered in her eyes, but she still attempted to rectify the situation. "It was a slip-up, I assure you." But my voice grew stern. "A mistake. Don't patronize me. I've read the messages. I know about the late nights, the fabricated excuses for your whereabouts. For how long have you been deceiving me, Sarah? For how long have you been mocking me with this affair?" Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but I remained unconvinced. Not this time. The joy that graced her face as she entered tonight, an exhilaration akin to euphoria, was not the expression of one who made a mistake. That was the visage of someone indifferent to the repercussions. "I didn't intend to cause you pain," she murmured softly, but her words lacked sincerity. "I didn't mean for it to escalate." I scoffed bitterly, shaking my head. "You didn't want to hurt me. You didn't. You've only brought pain, Sarah, and tonight it ends. You have to leave this house, immediately before the children return in the morning. I don't care where you go. stay with him if you must. But you won't set foot here again. You have until sunrise to pack your belongings and depart. What you've done to our lives is unacceptable, and I won't let it continue without a battle. As I left the room, you stood there, stunned, perhaps not expecting my resolve. But I had reached my limit. The weight of the truth was crushing me, and with each step I descended the stairs, it grew heavier. My fury grew stronger with every second that passed, forcing me to escape this house lest I do something reckless. Yet our confrontation is far from over. I retrieved my keys from the counter, their jingle echoing against the marble surface, and headed for the front door. However, as I neared it, Sarah's anxious, imploring voice rang out behind me. "Matt, hold on. Can't we discuss this? You don't get it." I wheeled around, my gaze harsh as she tumbled down the stairs, her face a blend of tears and desperation. "What is there to talk about, Sarah? You betrayed me, you deceived me, and now you're facing the consequences. I don't need to comprehend anything beyond that." She paused at the bottom step, gripping the banister for support. "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But it isn't just about that. We've been growing apart for months. Matt, you've been so detached, so engrossed in work and the children. Don't dare place the blame on me." I retorted sharply, my words slicing through the air like a knife. "You could have communicated with me. We could have resolved our issues together. Instead, you fled to him. I became at a loss for words with you. You made me feel like a spectral presence in this household, Matt, as if I no longer mattered to you. In response, I tightened my jaw to hold back my rising anger. Yet it was futile, so your answer to our problems was to sneak around and break everything we had established. That was your belief of making things right." Her eyes showed a fleeting moment, perhaps guilt or just a flash of clarity. However, it vanished as swiftly as it appeared, replaced by a chilly, defensive gaze. I needed to experience emotion again to feel desired, alive. "And you? You disregarded my feelings long ago." A silence settled between us, filled with her words, weighted and electric. There was some truth in what she said, but it offered no justification. I had been overly busy, perhaps preoccupied by the responsibilities of our existence. Her actions weren't justified. "Is this supposed to make me sympathize with you?" I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with anger. "Do you truly believe you're the victim in all of this? You think deceit and secretiveness are excusable? I provided you with everything, Sarah, everything, and you tossed it aside as if it held no value." She avoided my gaze. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, admit to her wrongdoings. But instead, she said the one thing that tipped me over the edge. "If you'd been a better partner, none of this would have transpired." My mind went blank. That was the final straw. All the hurt, the infidelity, the restless nights. It all erupted in that instant. "Leave," I said, my voice calm and lethal. "Leave my home before I do something I'll regret." She stood there, staring at me as if she couldn't believe what I had just uttered. But I wasn't playing games anymore. I was finished. "Matt, step outside," I bellowed, my voice causing her to stumble. Fear filled her eyes, and while a part of me reveled in this, mostly, I yearned for her departure. She remained silent, instead opting to flee up the stairs and vanish into the bedroom. The door slammed shut behind her, followed by muffled sobs. However, my empathy was non-existent. I stood firm in the hallway, my body quivering with anger. My fingers curled around the keys, leaving indentations on my palm. Her words reverberated in my mind, corrosive and invasive. If you'd been a better partner, maybe she was right. Maybe I hadn't been perfect. But I didn't deserve this torment. To escape the poisonous atmosphere within that house, I needed to clear my thoughts. So I stormed out, slamming the door shut behind me, and made for my car. Without a specific destination in mind, any location seemed preferable to the current one. For seemingly endless hours, I drove, my inner rage persisting, unwilling to abate. My thoughts whirled with the events transpired, her words, and the deceits she concealed. The image of her attempting to shift blame onto me recurred ceaselessly until I feared I'd succumb to madness. However, a change occurred within me. My fury began to morph into something more icy, more piercing. I would not allow her to escape unscathed. She needed to comprehend the gravity of her actions, and I knew precisely how to orchestrate that awareness. I pulled over into an empty parking lot, streetlights casting lengthy shadows on the asphalt. I inhaled deeply, striving for clarity amidst my turmoil. The children were secure with Mrs. Jenkins, and she had no inkling of my intentions. She believed she could maintain her duplicity, that she could deceive me, but she was mistaken. I grabbed my phone, sifted through contacts until I hit upon Tim's number. It had been a while since we last spoke, but I was certain he wouldn't fail me. Tim is the type who can unearth anything about anyone. He has connections, knows people who can uncover secrets, information that Sarah believed she had hidden forever. The phone rang twice before Tim responded. "Matt? It's been a while. What's up?" "Tim," I said, my voice even but icy. "I need your help." There was a brief silence on the other end. "What kind of help do you need? The kind where I need every detail about a specific person, where she goes, who she's with, anything else you can find out." Tim didn't ask for explanations. He didn't have to. "Provide the details," he said. I listed down Sarah's information, her workplace, the places she claimed to frequent, the timelines. I knew Tim would handle it from there, and within a few days, I'd have everything I needed. Sarah believed she could conceal herself, but she was on the verge of discovering her error. "Task accomplished," Tim stated upon my conclusion. "I'll reach out to you once I have some information." I expressed my gratitude and ended the call, my heart continuing to race, though for a new reason. The operation was underway, and I wouldn't rest until the truth was exposed before me, regardless of its ugliness. I remained in the car for a short while, gazing at the vacant lot, allowing the chilly night breeze to seep through the broken window. My anger persisted, but now it had a focus, a destination. I wouldn't simply watch as she wrecked everything we'd constructed together. Instead, I would regain control, one way or another. Eventually, I ignited the car and returned home. The streets were largely vacant as I traversed through the familiar area. By the time I parked in the driveway, the house was dark, save for a faint light emanating from the bedroom window. She remained awake, perhaps considering ways to turn this situation in her favor, seeking means to leverage it for her benefit. Yet, I was no longer participating in her game. Instead, I was altering the rules. With measured strides, I approached the house silently, my former rage now supplanted by a resolute chill. Ascending the stairs step by deliberate step, I finally arrived at the bedroom door. Without knocking, I pushed it open. Sarah sat on the bed's edge, her face smeared with tears, her eyes bloodshot and puffy. For an instant, she glanced up at me, a glimmer of hope appearing on her face, as if she thought perhaps I'd settled down, that I might be willing to forgive. However, my expression likely conveyed otherwise. "I will be staying in the guest room tonight," I said flatly, denying her an immediate response. "We shall discuss this matter in the morning. And Sarah, I advise you against attempting to reach him. You've inflicted enough harm in one evening," she implied without speaking as I departed, shutting the door after me. Yet her gaze followed me, her thoughts filled with apprehension and doubt. It was dawning on her that this would not end as she had anticipated. In the guest room, I found solace on an alien bed, a peculiar sense of tranquility enveloping me. This wasn't concluding soon, far from it. Now I held the reins. I was determined to ensure that Sarah would come to regret each decision she made by the time this ended. The following morning, my body taut with tension, I awoke before dawn, the guest room quiet as a tomb. I remained there for a while, contemplating, revisiting the night's events. Today was when everything would begin to crumble, and I stood ready for it. Subtle noises drifted from the kitchen. Sarah moved about, attempting to maintain an air of normality, but the situation was far from ordinary now. She was treading on fragile ground, and I could sense the fractures beneath her feet widening. I rose, took a swift shower, and donned my clothes quietly. As I gazed at my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the man looking back at me. A steely resolve had replaced the softness in my eyes, a chilliness that had crept up overnight. This was not a time for hesitation or assuming the role of the understanding spouse. That man seemed like a distant memory, at least for now. Upon entering the kitchen, I found Sarah at the counter, her back to me as she prepared breakfast. The aroma of coffee permeated the room, yet failed to dispel the tension that hung heavy in the air. She seemed to sense my presence behind her, and she turned around slowly, a strained smile on her face. "Good morning," she said, her voice overly cheerful, excessively casual, as if trying to brush away last night's events. "I made coffee. Would you care for something?" You disregarded the query, drawing a chair at the kitchen table and settling down. I perceived her momentary hesitation, her self-assuredness wavering. Yet she swiftly recovered, placing the coffee pot before me. "We need to discuss things," I declared, my tone sharp amidst the forced joviality. She nodded, biting her lower lip. "I understand. I've been mulling over what you said last night." In response, I raised a hand, halting her words. "This isn't about what you believe you can say to resolve this, Sarah. This is about honesty. I'm finished with the deceit." She scrutinized me, her complexion fading slightly. "Matt, I interrupted once more, my voice resolute. "I don't want your justifications. I've already initiated measures to uncover everything you've kept from me. So before you attempt to fabricate a tragic tale, I want you to grasp that this is your single opportunity to disclose the truth. No more lies. No more manipulations." Her eyes widened in surprise. "What do you imply?" "Did you take action with Tim?" I responded, observing as understanding dawned upon her sharply. She recognized immediately what that implied. Tim was not someone one called casually. He delved into matters others often missed. "Matt," she pleaded shakily, fear creeping into her voice. "There's no need for this. I'll disclose everything. Just give me a moment to clarify." I sat back in the chair, folding my arms across my chest. "I'm open to hearing," I said. She gathered herself, taking a deep breath as she struggled to maintain her composure. "It began a few months ago. I felt adrift, it seems. You were constantly busy and I felt unnoticed. It might sound ridiculous, but I started conversing with someone online merely to feel noticed again. It wasn't meant to escalate into something else." I remained silent, allowing her to proceed. She attempted to play the victim card, but I held my ground. "We had several encounters, initially only for coffee," she explained, her tone barely audible. "Yet it progressed beyond that. Matt, I acknowledge my mistake, but I never intended for it to go this far. I sensed the rage resurfacing, yet managed to keep it under control. And you didn't intervene. You didn't consider the children or me before continuing this secret liaison." Her eyes filled with tears, but I remained unaffected. She had cried enough insincere tears to fill a sea. "I was unaware of how to end it," she conceded, her voice breaking. "Each time I tried, he would draw me back in. He made me feel alive, but I understand it was wrong. I know I betrayed you." "Alive," I echoed, my tone dripping with irony. "You believe that justifies the destruction of everything? Because you wanted to feel alive." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't expect you to comprehend, but I'm telling you the truth now. It's finished. Over." I gazed at her, searching for remnants of the wife I once knew in those tear-streaked eyes. Instead, I saw a stranger, a person who had chosen to shatter our family, driven by self-centered ambitions. "Well," I said, my voice as frozen as the winter's ice, "it serves you right. Today, it's my turn. You need to gather your belongings and depart immediately. The children will remain with me, and you can account for your absence when you return." "Matt," she cried out, taking a step toward me. But I rose, holding up a hand to restrain her. "This is non-negotiable, Sarah. You've made your decisions, and now you'll face the consequences. I'll consult with my attorney and we'll iron out the specifics. However, you won't reside in this house." She seemed about to retort, to resist, but the determination in my eyes seemed to subdue her. Her shoulders sagged, and she nodded, yielding. "I shall gather my possessions," she murmured, turning away from me. As I stepped out of the kitchen, A peculiar blend of fury, sorrow, and a desolate sense of release washed over me. This wasn't the life we had planned, but it was the situation I now confronted. Despite the pain, I knew I couldn't let her linger, not after what she had done throughout the day. The house grew heavy with an unbearable quietness. Sarah was upstairs, gathering her belongings as instructed, while I sat in the lounge, my gaze fixed on the unlit television. A void gripped me, but I refused to succumb to it. I needed to concentrate. Moments before I went to check on the kids at Mrs. Jenkins, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Tim. "Found something. You're not going to like it. Call when ready." A shiver ran through me. If Tim was saying this, then whatever he had discovered must be far worse than I feared. I didn't hesitate to respond. I ventured into the backyard for some fresh air before making the call, and Tim answered on the first try. "Matt," he said gravely, "are you absolutely prepared for this?" I responded with urgency, clutching the phone. He sighed audibly, and his hesitation was palpable over the line. "Very well. It's not just one man, Matt. I uncovered evidence of multiple relationships. Hotel reservations, messages from various numbers. It's been happening for nearly a year now. She's been meeting them at different locations, using cash to hide her activities." For a brief moment, the world spun, and I had to brace myself against the house. I had suspected Sarah was deceiving me, but this is a betrayal I hadn't anticipated. "Who are these men?" I inquired softly, my fury simmering just below the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. "Men from her workplace, an acquaintance from a previous gym, and one yet to be traced," she maintained caution, "Matt, but not enough. I've gathered the facts, the messages, all you require if you decide to proceed further." The gravity of it struck me, overwhelming like a tsunami. "Forward it to me," I said, my voice lifeless. "I need to verify it myself." "Are you certain? This isn't something that can be unseen," Tim cautioned, his tone growing gentler. He understood the impact this would have on me. "Yes, I am sure," I responded, though my heart ached with each word. "Forward it. In a while, check your email. And Matt, if you require assistance, I'm at your service." I thanked him and ended the call, my hands shaking as I pocketed my phone. Once a symbol of tranquility, the backyard now felt like a confinement. The desire to shout, to destroy everything, coursed through me. Yet, all I could do was stand there, gazing vacantly, as my mind reeled with the scenes Tim had unearthed. I hesitated before re-entering the house, needing moments to comprehend the revelation that my wife, my lifelong partner, had maintained a double existence for so long. This wasn't a simple error. She had methodically dismantled our marriage, weaving lies with each man she brought into her life. Reluctantly, I ventured back indoors, the house now feeling oppressive as the burden of the deception weighed heavily on my heart. Straight away, I navigated to my computer and my email, my hands trembling. Predictably, there was a message from Tim with multiple attachments. Clicking on the first file, my stomach twisted as I read the contents. Hotel names, dates, messages that left no room for ambiguity. Each line was another stab to the heart, each image a new injury. The truth was now indisputable. This wasn't merely an affair, it was a series of premeditated betrayals, each one more deliberate than the last. My anger flared once more intense than before, consuming the sadness and replacing it with a frosty determination. I wouldn't let her escape this unscathed. She overstepped a boundary, and now it was my turn to demonstrate the consequences. Closing the laptop, I made up my mind. She had destroyed our shared life, and now I was going to retaliate. I ascended the stairs, each step imbued with intent. The bedroom door stood open, revealing Sarah, securing the final zip on her suitcase. She glanced up as I entered, her eyes reflecting a blend of remorse and perhaps dread. Fear, quite possibly. She recognized my newfound power, and she was right to be afraid. "I'm leaving," she whispered, hoping it would ease the situation, believing her departure could erase the wounds she had inflicted upon us. But I wouldn't let her get off so lightly, not after what I had just witnessed. "Sit down," I said coldly, my voice firm, leaving no room for debate. She hesitated, yet my expression apparently persuaded her to obey. She settled on the bed's edge, gazing at me with round eyes. "I am aware of everything, Sarah," I stated, causing her to flinch from the chill in my voice. "It was not only about last night, but also about all the others. I know the length of this act, your attempts to conceal it, yet you weren't discreet enough." The color drained from her face as she grasped the gravity of my words. "Matt, let me explain," she pleaded. However, my tolerance for her deceit had run out. "You didn't merely infidelate on me. You repeatedly destroyed everything we built, with every man you introduced to your life. You never considered me or our children. Your thoughts were only about yourself." Tears trickled down her cheeks, but they failed to stir any emotion within me. "No longer. Today, you are to leave this house and not return. After consulting with my attorney, you'll receive communication from him shortly. As for the children, I will ensure they comprehend the entire truth." "Matt, no!" she exclaimed, reaching towards me as if to hold my hand. But I retreated, remaining out of her grasp. "Don't do this," she pleaded. "I acknowledge my errors, but we can overcome this." "There is no more us," I responded sternly, halting her words. "With every lie and betrayal, you destroyed the connection between us. You chose your actions, Sarah, and now you must bear their consequences. Leave, now." Her expression altered as she accepted the futility of any escape. No more deception, no more coercion. She had lost, and she understood it. Slowly, she rose from her seat, clutching her luggage as she trembled. She halted at the doorway, casting one final glance in my direction, yearning for a glimmer of absolution, a chance to mend what she had shattered. But I offered nothing, only a frosty, unbending gaze that conveyed all she needed to comprehend. She departed, her suitcase's wheels reverberating in the corridor as she exited our shared dwelling. Once my dwelling, for good. The door closing marked the end of her stay, and I released the breath I had been holding. It wasn't the end, but I had taken the initial step towards reclaiming my life from the wreckage she left behind. There was no return now, only progression. The quietness that ensued following Sarah's exit was oppressive. The house, which once felt cramped, now seemed vast, reverberating with the emptiness of everything she took away. Her essence, her falsehoods, her betrayal. I stood in the hallway, gazing at the door she had just exited, experiencing a peculiar blend of relief and desolation. For a moment, I just stood there, allowing the truth of it all to seep in. She was absent, truly absent. The woman I adored, the woman with whom I constructed a life, was no longer present within that life, and it was all her doing. Instead of the overwhelming sorrow I had anticipated, there was just a hollow emptiness, a frigid void replacing my heart. I trudged back into the living room, each step burdened by the weight of the recent occurrence. The coffee she'd brewed remained untouched and cooling on the countertop. Without hesitation, I discarded it, observing the dark liquid spiral away, mirroring our marriage's dissolution. My phone buzzed again, disrupting the silence. It was Mrs. Jenkins inquiring about the children. For a moment, I hesitated, trying to dispel the fog of the morning's events. "Hello, Mrs. Jenkins," I said, my voice gravelly from the strain. "The kids are doing well," she responded with her usual warmth and assurance. "They've been playing all morning. They're oblivious to anything amiss. Don't fret. How are you feeling?" I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath before replying. "I'm fine, just dealing with things." She tenderly suggested, "You don't need to face this on your own." Offering help whenever needed, she added. Grateful for her compassion, I responded, "Thank you." I promised to collect my belongings soon, giving her the freedom to take her time. "They are content here," she emphasized, urging me to take some personal time as well. Once the call ended, I found myself seated on the couch, gazing blankly at the silent TV. My mind swirled with a tumultuous mix of thoughts and feelings, none lingering long enough for clarity. The once bustling house, now echoing with the absence of the kids, felt like a tomb haunted by the remnants of happier times. It became too much to bear. A need for escape from this weight overwhelmed me. I retrieved my jacket and keys, securing the door before stepping into the cool afternoon air. My destination was vague, All I required was to drive, to create some distance between myself and the wreckage of my existence. The roads were bustling with weekend traffic, families enjoying their day, couples walking hand in hand. Everything seemed so routine, yet I felt like an outsider observing it all. My car guided itself towards the park, a location I hadn't visited in months. This was where we brought the kids when they were smaller, and Sarah and I shared laughter before things spiraled out of control. Memories poured in as I parked and stepped out, retracing familiar paths. The park bustled with life, children playing, pet owners walking their dogs, echoes of laughter and vitality filling the air. Yet I felt detached from it all, like a spirit passing through someone else's reminiscences. I settled on a bench by the lake, gazing out at the water as the late afternoon sun danced on its ripples. The question that reverberated in my mind was, what next? What am I supposed to do now that everything I once trusted has vanished? The earlier fury and determination were dissipating, replaced with an empty sorrow I couldn't dispel. I initiated my journey to regain my life, but the path ahead remained enveloped in ambiguity. Sitting there, observing ducks gracefully glide over the water, I understood a truth. I was solitary, genuinely so. For years, Sarah had been absent, leaving behind only the smoldering remains of our shared existence. Yes, I had friends, yet this solitude was distinct. It stemmed from the painful awareness that the one who was supposed to be my companion, my confidante, had betrayed me irreparably. Yet, with this revelation came another, an unexpected one. Freedom. Though biting and icy, it existed, a testament to my newfound independence. I was no longer entangled in her deceptions, nor bound by a relationship that had been decaying from within. Rebuilding was now possible. I could commence anew, though it wouldn't be effortless or swift, yet it was plausible. I rose, casting one last glance at the lake prior to my departure towards the parking lot. The path ahead promised difficulty, and I anticipated there would be instances when the burden would seem excessively unyielding. Nevertheless, I resolved not to let her prevail. She had already extracted my trust, affection, and mental serenity. I wasn't going to permit her to claim my future as well. En route to Mrs. Jenkins to retrieve the children, a sense of resolve stirred within me. I would prioritize them, endeavoring to be the father they needed. They were blameless in this predicament, and I wouldn't let my resentment or sorrow tarnish their lives. I would reconstruct not only for myself, but for them. And perhaps, just perhaps, I might discover a means to mend. The journey back to Mrs. Jenkins felt more prolonged than typical, each steering wheel rotation propelling me nearer to an encounter I wasn't fully prepared for. Too young to comprehend the situation, the children needed an explanation. My mind was in disarray as I struggled to find the right words to tell them their mother wouldn't return tonight, or perhaps not again. Pulling into Mrs. Jenkins' driveway, I paused, gathering myself before stepping out. The cheerful laughter from within her house starkly contrasted with the turmoil within me. Taking a deep breath, I forced a smile and knocked on the door. Mrs. Jenkins welcomed me promptly, her nurturing presence providing a small comfort amidst the chaos. In the living room, the kids were constructing a large fort from pillows and blankets, while her elderly golden retriever watched casually. Looking at them so content, it triggered a knot in my gut. "Hey, kids," I called out, attempting to keep my voice cheerful as I entered the room. They both raised their eyes, grinning upon recognizing me. "Dad," Jake, my eldest, leapt up and dashed towards me, wrapping himself around my waist. "Can we stay here for dinner?" Mrs. Jenkins said we could have pizza. Trying to laugh, I tousled his hair. "We'll see about that, buddy. But first, we need to return home. We can discuss dinner on the way." "All right," Emily, my youngest, looked up from her fort with wide, inquisitive eyes. "Where's Mommy?" she asked sweetly, as if asking for the time. I hesitated, feeling my heart ache at the query. "She won't be returning home just yet," I answered gently, kneeling down to their level. "She had to leave temporarily." This left them both bewildered, showing their confusion. "Where did she go?" Jake questioned, his grip on me tightening. I hesitated, seeking the appropriate words. "Mom is requiring some personal space?" I asked softly, the reality weighing heavily upon me. She'll be staying elsewhere for a while. However, you two will remain here with me, understood? We'll face this challenge together." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she emerged from her fort to hug me. "I don't want Mom to leave," she whispered softly, clutching my neck tightly. "I understand, dear one," I replied, returning the embrace. "I realize it's difficult, but we will manage, I assure you." Jake's frown deepened as he struggled to comprehend what I was saying. "Is it because Mom and you had an argument?" he inquired tentatively, his voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Yes, Jake, we did have an argument, but that doesn't alter the fact that both your mother and I love you immensely, right? We were simply trying to sort out some matters at the moment." Jenkins hesitated at the doorway, her eyes brimming with compassion as she observed us. "Feel free to stay longer if you require it, Matt," she suggested softly. However, I declined, shaking my head. "I appreciate the offer, but we should return home. I need to communicate further with them." She understood, nodding. "You know how to reach me if you need assistance." I returned a thankful smile, then assisted Emily in disentangling ourselves and helped the children gather their belongings. The journey home was silent, the burden of my revelation heavy in the atmosphere like a storm cloud. They posed no more queries, and for that I was grateful, as I wasn't certain I had any additional responses. Upon our arrival, the house felt chillier than it previously had. Sarah's absence was now glaringly apparent, her typical presence replaced by a void that seemed to consume everything in its path. I escorted the children indoors, attempting to uphold an illusion of normality, even as it faded. "Perhaps you could amuse yourselves in your bedrooms for a moment," I proposed, striving to maintain composure. "I'll prepare dinner for us shortly." They acknowledged with nods, their countenances still emblazoned with puzzlement and apprehension, yet they followed my instructions, vanishing into the corridor. I observed them depart, the truth of my recent actions striking me anew. How does one clarify to a child that their mother won't return? How does one make them grasp something that remains incomprehensible even to oneself? I leaned against the kitchen counter, massaging my temples. The insensitivity was subsiding, and in its wake was a relentless feeling of bereavement, of shortcoming. This wasn't how things were supposed to unfold. We were meant to be a family, we were meant to be content, but now it's just me and the children, struggling to make sense of the remnants. I opened the refrigerator, seeking solace in something to distract myself, to focus on anything other than the void in our lives. I gathered ingredients for dinner, mechanically moving as I cooked, finding comfort in the familiarity of the routine. It provided a sense of stability amidst chaos. Meanwhile, the children whispered in their rooms, voices filled with worry and bewilderment. I knew they were fearful, perplexed, perhaps even enraged, and it was my responsibility to remain steadfast, acting as a beacon for them during this tempest. Yet, as I mixed ingredients in the pot, I couldn't shake off the feeling that everything was unraveling, that no matter how much I exerted myself, I couldn't repair what had been shattered. I couldn't undo Sarah's deceit, could not mend the havoc she wrought. All I could do was advance gradually and pray that somehow, someway, we would navigate through this ordeal. A set of footsteps alerted me from my reverie, revealing Jake standing at the door, his expression grave. "Son," you whispered softly, "will Mom return?" The question left me speechless, my heart aching. "I'm not certain, Jack," I replied, my voice choked with feelings. "Yet, no matter the outcome, we'll manage, I assure you." You nodded slowly, your eyes pleading for comfort. I attempted to return your gaze with a reassuring smile, aiming to be the steady father you looked up to. Yet, in truth, I was as disoriented as you were.